One of the biggest changes that's going to happen to you when you start to build muscle is the way in which women view you. But it's not all about being big and muscular. So let me tell you all about the good stuff and the not so good stuff. So first things first, women do love muscles. They love, if I'm at a party, if I'm going outside, if I'm out clubbing or hanging out with a group of friends, and there's women there and we're like talking, we're flirting, they're always coming up to me. They're always like grabbing my arm, like feeling this, feeling that, feeling the chest, all this stuff. They do love muscles. They do love the way it looks, the way it feels. It's attractive. It's definitely something, especially if you're skinny and you don't really have any muscle, it's definitely something that's going to level you up in that sense. They're definitely going to be you're definitely going to attract more women with more muscles. But a big thing that you have to realize is it's not everything. So a large part of being successful in life or being successful in anything is that a lot of times we're taught that we have to really hone our efforts and our skills into one specific thing. We focus on being an expert in like one thing, and then that's where we're judged by. That's what we are, that's what we do, and then we're just kind of average in all other categories. So like think about your work, for example. Your work has you specifically working on like one task, right? But if you were to do a coworker's task, maybe you wouldn't be that good at it, but that coworker is an expert on their task and not good at yours. It's the same thing with so many other things. When it comes to building muscle, when it comes to attracting women specifically, actually, it's less about being really good in one category, but rather having a decent level of acceptableness in a bunch of different categories. So yes, being muscular, being fit is definitely one category. Being extremely fit, working on your physique, getting that to an absolute premium is only going to take you so far, because there's so many other things. There's your social skills, there's your neuroticism, there's your confidence, there's the way you speak. There's just like a bunch of things, like your overall vibe, like the kind of energy that you bring when you show up to a conversation, when you're talking to them, the way you look at them, the way you smile. A lot of this stuff is like old school red pill stuff, but it does really matter though, trust me. Small things always add up. And so while building muscle and hitting the gym is definitely going to increase your attraction with women, don't stop the progress there. Like me, let it open the floodgates. Let that be the stepping stone into leveling up in other areas as well, such as your social skills, such as your fashion, your grooming, and your charisma and your confidence. And all of these things, when you put them together, that's what's going to get you into the position where you're going to be attracting an abundance of women. Let me give you a counter example for this. So wherever I tend to go, I tend to, yes, usually be like, the most physically fit, like, best physique. But of course, it's not always the case. There's times where I go out and I don't have the best physique. There's somebody who has a better physique, more shredded, he has more muscle, he's taller, whatever. And he has a better body than me overall. But you have to realize that those guys, a lot of the times, even though those guys have a better physique than me, they're not getting more girls than me, just because of the fact that they lack the social skills. They don't have the balls to talk to girls. They don't have the confidence, the charisma to sit in an uncomfortable situation when you're talking to girls. Sometimes it can be awkward, sometimes it can be awkwardly funny. There's whole kinds of situations. You gotta be open to that kind of experience. You gotta be open to that kind of risk a little bit. And so there's a lot of things at play. What I will say though is that improving your physique will definitely make you stand out. It'll definitely get eyes on you. That's the biggest thing that I noticed. When I didn't have muscle mass, when I didn't lift weights, go to the gym, if I went outside, if I went to the club or whatever, it was like I was invisible, bro. It was like I wasn't even there. It was just like I was like a bot or like a minion. In League of Legends, there's like minions, right? I was like basically a minion. Like it didn't matter. Like it was just inconsequential. Whereas now it's like I'm an actual person. Like people will notice me, look at me. It's like, oh, whoa, who's this guy? So it gets your eyes on you, gets you, that first impression, gets looks. But you gotta level yourself up to the point where you can, build off of that, have a conversation. Emotionally, you're neurodivergent. You're not weirdly autistic. You're not weirdly angry or mad or whatever. You're just like, you're a normal guy. You're happy. You can smile. You can make jokes, whatever. So charisma, all these things play a huge role. I've seen it time and time again. There are guys who have better physiques, better bodies. They get more eyes on them. I can notice, girls are always looking at them, but they don't end up approaching or talking to them, especially even if we're in a club. They'll just be standing there. So there's more to it than just that. The last thing I'll say when it comes to muscle mass is that you don't want to just be like big as you don't want to just be like huge, like just muscles, like a steroid, like fat bodybuilder. Because basically what that does is it just makes you look fat. It just makes you look unattractive. The best look is kind of like this athletic, like warrior kind of look, where it's like you kind of have that V taper, and you have the muscles, but you're leaner as well. And so I think a lot of people do understand that, and what they do is they avoid bulking. And so what the actual solution is to just train more so like kind of like a warrior, train more so kind of like an athlete, instead of like just a textbook bodybuilder who's just bulking up and making every single muscle group as big as possible. You're training using compound movements, you're training, your metabolic stress is different, the amount of calories, the amount of taxing effect that you have onto your body is entirely different when you're using compound movements. You're training for power as well as hypertrophy. There's a lot of different things you can use and your methods with training. When I was bulking up, even when I was at my biggest, I would say I was never considered as fat. Like, people just thought of me as like really big and really jacked. Like, people call me like a gorilla. I was 205 pounds, but I was never like really that fat. And so yes, obviously at some point, if you do finish the bulk, then yes, cut back down. But even without that, if you're just bulking, you don't want to just be like massively big, unless that's your goal. But overall, you should try to be more of like a warrior or athletic kind of build. That's the kind of stuff that I teach. That's the kind of stuff that I preach in my coaching. So if that sounds like something of interest to you, be sure to check out the link in the description below. I help guys make that transformation from skinny to jacked. But yeah, guys, in conclusion, building muscle definitely helps, but it's only part of the equation when it comes to attracting women. It gets you more eyes on you, gets you the looks, but you gotta finish off the package so you can close the deal. There's many things that need to stack together in order to actually be the complete package to attract many women and become that, that kind of man that they desire, the ideal man that they desire. So I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, please ask in the comments below. But with that being said, that's going to be the end of this video. Like the video if you did, subscribe if you're not already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.